Well, Jim, let's get some questions here on the show. Questions from the Cult of Cornette, and we'll start with a question from the Cult of Cornette Facebook group. This one
that everybody's still trying to get into.
Well, we have now allowed 8.4 thousand, or 8,400, I guess I should say.
Either was right.
We've allowed 8,400 people into the group so far, and there are still tens of thousands trying to get in, but we're going through every application, so stay tuned. And if you're not going to get your comments on the questions, maybe that's also why. But here's a question. Here's a question from the Cult of Cornette Facebook group from William McPherson. What if Roddy Piper had remained in the NWA Jim Crockett Promotions in the 80s? How big of a difference maker would he have been? And would he have been either the top babyface or the top heel from any time between 84 and 87?
Ooh, see, therein lies the problem. Because the top heel was Flair, the top babyface was Dusty, and that may be why Roddy didn't stick around. I think Piper would have been natural as a heel, but at the same time, he and Flair were so good against each other. But at the same time, can you imagine a four horsemen of Flair, Arn, Tully, and Piper?
And that's what it would have been, because Piper was his drinking buddy.
Yeah, and that the whole reason the Horsemen got together was because they were the group. Well, Piper would have been in that group. So, I mean, obviously, all things considered, it worked out better for Roddy because he became the premier, heel to Hogan's first run. And they're still doing documentaries about that. And Roddy was the guy that provided the antagonism for most of the early years of the WWF there. Whereas if they hadn't had him, the whole thing with Rock and Wrestling Connection, with Piper, with MTV, or not with Piper, but with Lauper, MTV, the whole 9 yards, that wouldn't have happened. So the promos in the NWA and the matches would have been off the fucking charts with Roddy as one of the horsemen, but he probably wouldn't have done as well and it would have definitely been a big difference for Crockett, I think, just to have Roddy on the, but I mean, our roster was so loaded already, but Roddy stood out as one of the absolute best. But, it probably worked out the best way for Roddy and for the WWF that he did what he did, because even talent-wise, he was there. But if Dusty had to make the decision, do I make him the top babyface or myself? Or do I turn Flair babyface and make Piper the top heel, but then me and Flair on the same side? Eventually, that might not have worked out.
There have always been stories or direct comments that one of the reasons that Rick Steamboat, if not the main reason that Rick Steamboat left Jim Crockett Promotions for the World Wrestling Federation in early 85 was Dusty as the booker. Ricky Steamboat recognized what his limitations would be on the card, with Dusty eating up the top spot for a babyface. You just discussed that with Piper. What would Piper do? Because you have Dusty here, you have Flair here.
Yeah.
Can you see is there any scenario where Dusty would have been able to book and use himself and not have himself as the top guy? Where he mentally would have been able to do that?
Well, and part of the thing also is, how much I love Ricky Steamboat's work. Steamboat was not the box office attraction Dusty was. At that point in 1984, he just wasn't. And wasn't going to be, I don't think. Tremendous wrestler. And he and Flair were the gold standard. But as far as big show, major box office, big money match, Dusty outranked Steamboat. That may not have been the case with Roddy. Although it would have been close again. People again forget what Dusty's status was in wrestling at that point in time. You would be looking at Hogan, Piper, Flair, Dusty as the four guys, and Andre still, as the four guys that were the big box office attractions in the entire business, not just one company. So that would have made it a little, I think Steamboat would have been great with Dusty because Dusty loved athletic baby faces like that, the Rock and Roll Express. They weren't all the Road Warriors, but he wasn't going to be the top guy.
Plus, if Magnum was coming in, that was going to only hurt Steamboat.
I was about to say, that's the thing. Steamboat didn't want to necessarily, I don't think, had a problem maybe being behind Dusty, but then there's Magnum. And now he's number 3. And Magnum was new. Steamboat had been in the Carolinas for years. So that was, he just saw the overall scheme of things, Dusty bringing in his own guys rather than just leaving because of Dusty himself. But that would have hurt Magnum, because if Piper was there, it would have been harder for Maggie to get over, because Piper was so established and a force of nature, whereas, Magnum was still new. So he would have been number 3 on the babyface side if Roddy was there.
If Piper stays, well, he already started. I was going to say, does he get They Live? He had already started acting before then.
Yeah.
But would he have gotten They Live?
Well, he might have got They Live, but would he have got the time off to do it? I don't know. And in that case, he might have said, well, fuck it, then I'll just go do that. Because Dusty did not like to give people time off. I asked for time off to go to a wedding one time. He said, is it going to be in Greensboro? Because that's where you're going to be on that day.